Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our presentation, How Cryptocurrencies May Change the Way We Do Business, presented by Dr. Tom Smith of Emory University's Goizueta Business School in collaboration with Ivy Exec. A good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending where you're joining us from in the world today, and we do appreciate your presence. My name is Nihat Benciential. I'm the Senior Content Manager here with Ivy Exec, and I'll be helping to moderate today's session. Before we begin, I do want to review a couple of brief housekeeping items with the audience. First, all attendees are currently in listen-only mode. However, we do encourage you to participate in the session by asking questions to our presenter. You can do so using the question box in your GoToWebinar control panel, located on either the left or right-hand side of your screen. We also do encourage questions during the presentation, and there will be a formal Q&A session during the last 15 minutes of presentation as well. Additionally, we're recording today's session, so you can look forward to receiving a copy of the recording via email in coming days. And now, I'd like to introduce you to today's presenter, Dr. Tom Smith. Tom Smith is an associate professor in the practice of finance at Emory University's Goizueta Business School. He holds a PhD in economics from the University of Illinois at Chicago and specializes in economics of sports and entertainment. He also comments on macroeconomic trends, changes in unemployment, and global economic policies through approximately 100 media events per year. He's been at Goizueta for about 10 years and has also been featured on Poets and Quant's list of top 40 undergraduate professors. And with that, I'd like to turn things over to Tom.
Hey, thank you very much. Appreciate it. I want to tell people that I'm very, very happy to answer questions as we go. I teach at Goizueta, and I teach in every program that Goizueta offers, from undergraduates to MBA and executive MBA students. And so it's very rare for me to get through much of a lecture without people asking questions. And so I encourage people to ask questions when they come about. We will have a question and answer session at the end of this. We'll dedicate a couple minutes, but the truth is that this is a really fascinating topic, and people are probably going to be very curious about what things mean and how they work into their business or the business environments in general. And so, again, I encourage questions as you come up. So today's discussion is about cryptocurrencies, and so it's, how cryptocurrencies may change the way we do business. I think that cryptocurrencies are going to change the way we do business, or probably more directly, the technology behind cryptocurrencies, which is called blockchain. And so I want to show you something, and you guys probably are familiar with this. This is the graph. I just did a screenshot of this. This is the mapping of the price of Bitcoin over the last year and change. And you might have remembered this. This is a little peak here. Actually happened on my birthday. And Bitcoin topped out at a little over $19,000 per coin. And so if you had purchased a coin on 12/17/2016, it would have cost you maybe $600, a little over $600. And so that's a huge increase. Now, since then, Bitcoin is trading at about half this price. And so it's currently trading between $8,000 and $10,000. So yesterday it was trading at, I did the screenshot yesterday, it was trading at about $7,000, which is a considerable drop from this height of $19,000. Once it hit $19,000, people went pretty crazy and really wanted to understand what is going on with this currency, if this is something they should be paying attention to. And I am of the opinion that it is. This is something that's not going away, and we should understand what it means and why we should care about it. Okay, so let's just talk about this a little bit. Okay, this is sort of the general discussion that I want to have today for the next 45, 50 minutes. I want to make sure that everybody understands what a cryptocurrency is, why does it have value, or how the value of a particular currency can be determined. All right, what is blockchain and how is it used? So what is the underlying technology behind the cryptocurrencies? Why do cryptocurrencies show such huge price volatility? And when we saw just 3.5, 4 months ago, it was trading at almost $20,000, and now it's trading at a third of that price. Is the cryptocurrency market here to stay? Should I invest in cryptocurrencies? And so these are just sort of the general elements that I want to touch on today. But the truth is that our discussion can go a little bit deeper depending on how curious people are and where they think that this particular element, this new technology and this new coin, currency, commodity is going. Okay, and so here's just a list. I grabbed this off of investing.com. Here are just a list. This is arranged by market capitalization. This is just the first 20 or so cryptocurrencies in about 1,000 currencies that are listed on it's investing.com is where I grabbed this information, right? And so the cryptocurrency in general is just a digital currency that uses this blockchain technology. And so these are some of the currencies. You may have heard of some of these. You may not have heard of some of these. So Bitcoin is perhaps the most famous. It's right there listed at the top. It trades at about, like I said, $9,000 to $7,000. It has a huge market capitalization. Then there's Ethereum, Ripple, Bitcoin Cash, Litecoin, but it just goes and goes and goes and goes and goes and goes. There's no end to the number of currencies that can be initiated in the market. All right. People want to know, like, how do I identify a currency that is going to sustain value? You don't. You can't. Okay. One of the things about the currency itself is that it follows the rules of other currencies, right? So in general, like our currency, I don't have any dollars on me because I mostly just transact in it with my debit card. But our current currency has no intrinsic value. It's what we call a fiat currency. Okay, so it's not backed in gold or silver or platinum or anything else. We transact this currency every single day because we believe that it has value, right? And you have a reason to believe that it has value because you go and transact, you buy goods and services every single day with your currency, and nobody thinks twice about it, right? So I mean, I buy like a couple of these coffees every single day. I love my coffee, and every single day, if I wanted to, I could pull out a $5 bill and give a $5 bill to somebody, and they would accept it in exchange for my vanilla latte. I've never had somebody not accept my $5 bill or a $10 bill or what have you in exchange for a good or service. And it's because they believe that the currency has the value that it does. Right, the government does back it, right, with the full enforcement, and it says, look, this is a currency, we believe in it, you should believe in it, but the reason we believe in it is because we transact it all the time, and nobody denies our transactions. Okay, does a government have to issue a currency in order for something to be a currency, or does it have to issue money in order for something to be money? No, money has to have three characteristics. It has to have a unit of account and a store of value, and it has to be a widely accepted medium of exchange. And so in World War II, there was a really awesome article written about POWs in German POW camps, and was published in the American Economic Review, and it talks about how POWs used cigarettes as currency. And so you could get, a pair of slacks hemmed for 2 cigarettes, or you could get something ironed for a certain number of cigarettes, or you get a cup of tea for a certain number of cigarettes. And the government didn't just plop down into this camp and say, okay, this is what you're going to use as a medium of exchange. This is what the prices of these goods and services are. The people, the actors, the individuals in that economy identified that commodity, that cigarette, had some kind of a value. Okay, now a cigarette would be sort of a currency based on something that has some kind of an intrinsic value, right? I mean, so it has tobacco, it has nicotine, you could actually consume it. It'd be a really bad use of that money, but you could consume it. Okay, and in that case, cigarettes are a little bit different than our current currency, which has no intrinsic value. You can't consume $1, you can't smoke $1 or something. I suppose you could, but it wouldn't give you any kind of value, right? So what's the takeaway here? Takeaway is that we think about a currency because the government gives it to us or presents it. We use it every single day. We can see that people accept it, so we have an idea that it has usefulness, but the government doesn't have to issue a currency in order for something to act as a currency. And we've seen plenty of examples in the past where that has actually occurred, where currencies have popped out through a necessity, okay? So, I mentioned this transaction here, and why it's important to understand this transaction is that you have dollars and you physically give dollars to somebody else, and in exchange, they give you a good or service. This is a little different than a cryptocurrency, right? Because in a cryptocurrency, there's no physical element to the dollar at all or the currency at all, okay? So this is how a cryptocurrency works, right? It has the exact same fiat status, so it has no intrinsic value. You accept the money because you believe it has value, right? So I could buy a bicycle from somebody for, I don't know, 0.000125 Bitcoins. And I might make that transaction if and only if I believe that the bicycle is worth that amount of Bitcoin, and the person who's selling me the bicycle also believes it, and we transact. So I say, here's some Bitcoin, I would like your bicycle. They say, I have a bicycle, I want your Bitcoin, and then poof, the transaction occurs. And it only occurs if we both are in agreement that that transaction is worthwhile, right? And so nobody tells us that the Bitcoin is worth a certain amount of money. We have to decide if I'm willing to exchange a certain number of Bitcoin for a bicycle or a coffee or a cigarette or what have you, okay? Do I have reason to believe that it has the value that it does? I have reason, if I hold the Bitcoin, I have reason to believe it has value, perhaps because I paid for it, right? So I could have gone into a cryptocurrency exchange and spent a couple $100 for a particular amount of Bitcoin, and then I anticipate or expect that I am going to actually be able to transact that same amount of Bitcoin going forward, okay? And so I say, look, I've got $20 or I've got $200 worth of Bitcoin that I've purchased. I expect that that Bitcoin is actually going to withhold or keep its $200, and so going forward, I fully anticipate that that I'm going to be able to take this amount of Bitcoin and buy $200 worth of stuff. Of course, people in the universe that have goods or services have no expectation of that. So if you were to come to me and say, I like this piece of artwork on your wall, I want to buy it for a certain number of Bitcoin. I have no expectation that your Bitcoin is worth any amount of money as far as I'm concerned. I'm only willing to sell you my piece of art for a certain amount of Bitcoin if I believe that the Bitcoin can be transacted in the future for something in addition to just being a 1 or a 0 on it in a computer environment. Okay, so what's the takeaway here? Is that cryptocurrencies work, and people do transact cryptocurrencies all the time, but they only work because everybody who's participating in that transaction believes that the cryptocurrency has some value. But there's no reason to believe it other than we believe it. It's a little bit different than dollars, right? We have this history of transacting a dollar. We have a history of transacting a Mexican peso or a euro or a pound and what have you. And we can see it transact every single day. if we're not actually operating in this environment, we might not see this transact every single day. And so we'd be hard pressed to have a history to say this is what a currency should transact at, and this is what the value that it has.
Tom, before we move on, I have a question coming from Volodymyr. He'd like to understand what conditions might be necessary in order to have cryptocurrencies become a massively accepted as a payment method.
Yeah, so that's a great question. So I mentioned that a currency, in order for something to be considered money, it has to have these three characteristics, right? It'd be a widely accepted medium of exchange, a store of account, and this widely accepted medium of exchange or massively accepted medium of exchange is one of the criteria. So we accept things because we have a history of seeing that there is success in transactions. So in order for let's say a Bitcoin to become a widely accepted medium of exchange, you can't tell a market that it has to accept something. The market has to accept that that is in fact the truth, right? And so let's go back to this POW example, all right? So the market has already been established. You're an unfortunate combatant and you get captured and you end up in that prisoner of war camp, right? And you show up and people say this is where you caught, these are where you can eat, what have you, right? This is where exercise plan is of the day, and this is the commander of the camp, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then you're about to pull out a pack of cigarettes to have yourself a smoke, and somebody says, whoa, 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 whoa. By the way, that cigarette has value in our camp. We use cigarettes as money. And you say, you might be skeptical and say, like, really? Like, I hadn't noticed this. Okay, well, just spend a day, don't smoke, spend a day and watch people transact these cigarettes. And sure enough, you hang out for the day and you notice that people are buying and selling things with cigarettes, and you realize that you've got 18 cigarettes on your person, and so you have just essentially parachuted into this economy with a bunch of currency that is, as far as the economy is concerned, is a widely accepted medium of exchange. Okay. If somebody said, "Oh, you know what? Our accepted medium of exchange is shoelaces," then the cigarettes could be used to smoke. You find yourself in an economy that has already accepted that as a medium of exchange, and then you just sort of follow the path. We can't tell an economy that this is the money that it has to use, okay? Most organized economies like the US or Canada or what have you, the government has established that a currency is a really good idea, all right? It takes transaction costs out of the system. And transaction costs can disrupt economic activity and make it very, very difficult for people to actually engage in the transactions that they need. So if you don't believe the person next to you is going to really give you the service or the good, and they don't believe that you're really giving them valued money, then it's almost impossible to transact. But if everybody is in agreement, then you can transact much easier. And so when we have a formalized economy, the government establishes this currency and says this is the currency of our economy, and you should accept it because we're telling you that you should accept it. Cryptocurrencies aren't going to work that way, right? You don't have one single government who's going to say, yes, we're accepting this as a medium of exchange. The economy itself has to embrace it, and that's very difficult because people aren't even sure what it is. I don't know, hopefully that answered your question. Of course, you can't really tell me if it answered your question, but I hope it did.
I think it was a very well-rounded answer. Back to regular schedule programming.
Yeah. Are there any other questions? I just see this thing that's like this flashing thing over here that's identifies questions. Are there any other questions that are coming in?
Yeah, we have one from Walter. He's wondering if he does a transaction with Bitcoins for goods in real world, uh, and I would adjust the amount of Bitcoins to the actual value in dollars. Is this true? If so, what is the sense of Bitcoin as a currency?
Yeah, so that's one way that you could transact Bitcoin right now, or Ripple or Ethereum or what have you, right? You could say, let's suppose that you have one Bitcoin, right? And you say, okay, right now, if I go to the market, I can trade my Bitcoin for $1,000. So you value your Bitcoin at $10,000. So, and you value your Bitcoin at $10,000. So then, let's suppose that somebody at a local car dealership is selling a used Audi for $10,000. Then you could theoretically go to that person who has that car dealership and say, look, I have this Bitcoin. The Bitcoin is currently trading at $10,000. You have a car. The car is listed at $10,000. I am willing to exchange you this Bitcoin for that car. And that's how you could do it. Of course, the person who owns the car has to be comfortable with the fact that they're accepting Bitcoin instead of $10,000. Now, you could say, here, let's go up. You pull up a computer screen and you say, look, right now it's transacting at $10,000. And so I give you the Bitcoin. It's just like I've got $10,000. So you should give me a car for that. Now, the person might say, well, then why don't you sell your Bitcoin for $10,000 and give me the $10,000 in cash? They might be interested in that because they might have a more difficult time transacting the Bitcoin going forward than $10,000 in cash. The reason is because they could go out and buy something else for $10,000 in cash right now today, because we accept US dollars as a medium of exchange, and most of us are not accepting the cryptocurrencies as a medium of exchange. So I know my answer is yes, you could identify the value of your crypto by whatever it's trading at right now, but you'd still have to find a willing partner who's willing to accept the crypto in exchange for the commodity or the good or the service. Hopefully that makes sense.
All right, I think so. I'm following. Hopefully everyone else is as well.
Okay. All right. Any additional questions?
I'll try and reserve the rest for the end so we can make some more progress on the presentation.
Sure, of course. Okay. All right. So here is just a general outline of how a cryptocurrency transacts. Now, remember, I've included this diagram because this diagram is so simple, right? Here's how a dollar transacts. I have a dollar. I give you a dollar. You give me a coffee. Okay. It's not as simple with a cryptocurrency. With a cryptocurrency, what happens is I want to send some money to you. I have a cryptocurrency, right? I have a Bitcoin, or I have a unit of Ethereum or Ripple or Bitcoin Cash or any number of these things. You and I have decided on some kind of a transaction. And so you say, look, I'm willing to accept, 1/1,000,000th of a Bitcoin Cash for this pen. Okay, terrific. I want that pen, so I'm going to send you 1/1,000,000th of a Bitcoin Cash. Okay, so now we need to transact this, and it's not as easy as me just pulling out my wallet and giving you a dollar. I do have a wallet. Okay, it's a coin wallet, and it's online. And so what happens is that on my digital wallet, I've got some amount of Bitcoin. So then what has to happen is I have to take it out of my wallet and I have to send it to you. Okay, that transaction is represented as a block of information. All right. Now what happens is when I say I'm going to send you this this part of a Bitcoin Cash or Bitcoin or Ethereum or Ripple, what have you, then you're going to get a notice on your side, usually through an email, that says Tom Smith has sent you a certain amount of of Bitcoin Cash, right? Then what happens is you accept it. But in order for the Bitcoin or the Bitcoin Cash, the Ethereum to go from me to you, that transaction has to be verified. And it has to be verified by the open network. That's what makes this transaction a little bit different than a transaction in cash, is that since there's no physical asset, everybody has to agree that I had the Bitcoin Cash to begin with and that you are about to receive it. So what happens is I transfer this thing to you and the information comes across as a block. And then what happens is that it's an open ledger. It's open to everybody who's in the network. And then everybody who's in the network then has to validate the transaction. Say, okay, do you have the Bitcoin to give, let's say, Mark? All right. So then what they do is they have to trace back the pieces of information that showed that I received it from Jason, and then Jason received it from Sam, and Sam received it from everybody else. But all those transactions have already been verified, but they can double check them in this chain of blocks. Okay. So I received it from somebody else. That block has already been verified. It's in the universe. When I send it to you, I'm creating a new block of information. And so what will happen is that my new block will include information from the old blocks, kind of like this. All right. So what happens is when I transact it to you, right, owner one, what happens is I have information about who I received it from. Okay, like owner zero. All right, and so there'll be a block of information that says owner zero transacted this amount of cryptocurrency to me, owner one. And then what happens is when I want to give it to Mark, then I'm creating this new transaction, right? Owner two. And so what'll happen is it creates this second block. So it'll take this owner one's information along with owner two's information and match it up. And then owner two can send it along to owner three. And what happens is then each block contains information from the previous block. And then these blocks are chained together to show how one particular part of this cryptocurrency has moved along within the economy. Maybe you've received a dollar in the past that has a stamp on it that says, "Where's George?" or something like this, right? I've seen dollars like this. And if you go to a website and then you can type in the security code that's on your dollar, right? The little set of numbers that are on your dollar, and it'll show you, oh, my dollar like 2 months ago was in Wisconsin, and then a month before that it was in Wyoming, and a month before that it was in San Diego or something like this. And so you can see that your dollar has moved, let's say, across the country. Okay, so that's a very fun process to do if you ever get a dollar like that. But not every dollar is stamped with something like "Where's George?" and you can't track where every dollar has been. For a cryptocurrency, the idea of the cryptocurrency is you can track where every little piece of that currency started and where it has ended up. And this ledger, right, these pieces of information are open to everybody. And so it is a completely open set of transactions. Everybody can verify it at the same time. It's one of the benefits of having a cryptocurrency. All right. But essentially, every transaction then going forward would include information from all of the previous transactions. And that's what we call the blockchain. Okay.
Denise is wondering who comprises the network. Maybe if I can interpret a little bit, are there any such thing as gatekeepers, with cryptocurrency, any sort of authority, or is it just a bunch of individuals who have access to this network?
Yeah, so it actually is just a bunch of individuals, and that's one of the pluses or benefits of a cryptocurrency, is that you don't have, let's say, a central bank, some kind of a reigning authority that identifies how the money, if the money should be put into the economy or subtracted from the economy. When you see the Fed say something like they're going to raise interest rate targets, right? That's the Fed saying that they're going to engage in contractionary monetary policy. So the Fed is, for all intents and purposes, withdrawing dollars from the economy. So our central bank engages in monetary policy that decides how much money is in our economy. All right. For cryptocurrencies, there's no central banking authority that decides how much money is in the system. Okay. The amount of money in the system has been built into the system itself. So what happens is I started doing seminars on cryptocurrencies not quite a year ago, but almost. And one of the times I did a seminar, I said, you know what? I'm going to keep giving seminars, but what I want to do is the next couple of seminars, I'm only going to accept Bitcoin or some other cryptocurrency as a payment for anything, right? So if I buy a coffee or if I take a cab or Uber to the seminar and you're supposed to reimburse me, I want you to reimburse me in cryptocurrencies. And they said, oh, that's perfect. We just love this idea. Okay. I haven't asked Ivy to buy me my coffee in cryptocurrencies, but I very well might. But what happened is that somebody from that organization said, fine, we're going to send you X amount of Ripple, which is a currency. Okay. And I said, terrific. Now, at the moment, I didn't own any Ripple until somebody sent it to me. But as soon as they sent it to me and I accepted it and it became verified, now in my coin wallet, I have some Bitcoin, some Bitcoin Cash, some Ethereum, and then some Ripple, which is right. And so all of a sudden now I was part of the Ripple blockchain. And I wasn't before. So I could send some Ripple to one of my friends and say hey, you don't have any of this currency. Let me just send you some. Okay. Or, I want to buy an autographed baseball from you or something like this. Right. So I could send them some Ripple and then all of a sudden they would be part of the blockchain. And so there's nothing that prevents any, say, ordinary person, you, me, what have you, from entering into this blockchain if somebody wants to include us in the blockchain. The verification works the same way. Okay. Let me go to this next slide here. I'm going to go to this slide. I'm going to go back here in a second. Maybe you've heard of cryptocurrency mining or Bitcoin mining. Okay. What happens is that this transaction right here, okay, the approval or the making sort of validating the fact that this transaction has occurred has to occur by a network of individuals. And what happens is there is a math problem that needs to be solved in order to verify that I had the cryptocurrency and I'm going to send it to somebody else. Okay, that is what we call cryptocurrency mining. Okay, in this example of Bitcoin mining. So what happens is if I set up a bunch of servers and essentially I tell them to go to a particular place on the internet to mine coin, what will happen is my server will be eligible to engage in transaction verification. And when it does, and so when my server and a bunch of other servers verify a transaction, one of these blocks, then what happens is that my server receives a percentage of a Bitcoin that's created when we verified other people's transactions. And that's what we call mining. And so what happens is that I will receive some amount of a Bitcoin in exchange for validating other people's transactions. These validations take about 10 minutes, but they take an immense amount of computing power. And the reason is because they want a network of individuals to join forces and verify that other people's transactions are in fact valid. And so what creates this very open platform where anybody can participate, anybody can receive these coins, anybody can transact these coins, and everybody can see all the coins that have been transacted. So it creates a ledger that is 100% or can be 100% publicly viewed. And that's one of the benefits of a cryptocurrency, is that the ledger is completely public. Okay, I'm going to go back to this other slide here. Excuse me for a second here, right? So let's just talk about the costs and the benefits of the blockchain technology, right? Remember that, remember that we've got this chain of information. So when I transact part of this cryptocurrency to you, and then you transact it to somebody else, and they transact it to somebody else, we are adding one more block to this chain of information about who owned it before us, and who owned it before us, and who owned it before us, okay? And so what happens is you've got this string of information that can be traced back. Again, this information is completely open, so it's an open ledger, right? And so what it means is that it's very difficult to hack or corrupt or forge the information, because if you tried to transact something that you didn't have, let's suppose that I wanted to go buy an Audi, and I said, oh, I've got this one Bitcoin, it's worth $10,000, and your car's worth $10,000. And so it would be really difficult for me to create a forged Bitcoin or a forged piece of Ripple, okay? And the reason is because in order for me to transact that, it goes into the network, and people have to verify that I have it in the first place, which means they have to verify the blockchain that goes up to me and then continues to the next person. But of course, if I just try to create a Bitcoin out of nowhere, there will be no verifying block. And so people say, we can't find all the information that says that you have that Bitcoin to begin with, or that Ripple to begin with, so therefore we don't believe that you have it. Okay, and since it's open to everybody, it doesn't take long for the group to verify that you do or don't have something, right? So it's very transparent. The chain allows you to see transactions that started at one point and end at a different point, okay? A benefit and a cost is that it's semi-anonymous, right? So my information is not on the block. It doesn't say Tom Smith, Emory University owns this much Ripple or this much Bitcoin. What it does is it has an ID number, right, as part of this hash, as part of this unique identifier on the piece of information. But you could trace it back to some owner of a coin wallet and say, like, oh, that's the person who owns that coin wallet. This hash belongs to them. Therefore, that Bitcoin transaction belongs to that particular person, okay? But that second half, like finding a wallet, finding information about the person who owns the wallet, and then tracing it back to Bitcoin transactions, can be a very difficult task. It can be done, but it's very difficult, okay? I say this is a benefit and a cost. And so one of the reasons why it might be a benefit is because you don't want everybody to see what kind of transactions you're making, okay? One of the costs is then you could engage in transactions that are nefarious, and nobody would know that you're doing it, okay? Right? The benefit of this is that this whole system, the fact that it's transparent, there's an open ledger, that everybody has to verify the transactions, means that blockchain could be used for quality control, accounting, all types of supply chain systems and management. You can use it for voting. You could use it for different global exchanges, from business to business or person to person. And so it has lots of really interesting uses. Let me go and talk a little bit about this, about Bitcoin fluctuation. And we saw this, right? This is one of the first slides that I show that had this, this huge ramp up in value and then a gradual decrease. And that's a huge fluctuation, right? It's lost 2/3 of its value in 4 months or so, okay? We've seen other types of crazy fluctuations, right? So here's PotCoin, okay? So PotCoin, it turns out, sent Dennis Rodman, or paid for Dennis Rodman's trip to North Korea. If you're not familiar, Dennis Rodman used to play for the Chicago Bulls and Hall of Famer in the NBA. And for whatever reason, he seems to be personal friends with the supreme ruler of North Korea. And so PotCoin sent Dennis Rodman to North Korea very recently. And then it made it very clear that they were the ones that were flipping the bill. And then PotCoin got a lot of they got a lot of media attention. And so then this just happens. Like, so they had a 97% increase in value after people found out that they had sponsored Dennis Rodman's trip. And then, like, just one day later, it dropped by 23%. And so these fluctuations are really crazy, right? Can go like way up, can go way down. Okay. Now, this particular coin, right? It was developed to facilitate transactions between businesses, some marijuana consumers and producers, right? And so one of the reasons here is that, like it or not, marijuana for recreational use is legal in Colorado and Las Vegas, okay? And there are also banking laws that make it illegal for businesses that own pot establishments to actually put the money that they receive for those transactions into a bank. And so now you have business owners who have hundreds of thousands of dollars and can't transact in cash. They have to transact in cash and can't put their money in a bank because it's illegal to put that money in a bank. So they could buy, let's say, PotCoin, and then they could purchase goods and services using PotCoin, and then take their money back out of PotCoin and put it into the bank. And so the cryptocurrency itself could facilitate transactions that are now very difficult because of the conflicting set of laws surrounding the use of marijuana and banking the money used that arrives from the selling of marijuana. It's crazy, but maybe this cryptocurrency is a solution to that particular problem. Okay, here's something else. Maybe you've heard of the Long Island iced tea company. Now it's called Long Blockchain. I just like to refer to it as the Long Island Iced Tea Blockchain Company Corporation. And you will notice here in mid-December that it just spiked. Like, this is the stock price of what used to be the Long Island Iced Tea Company that changed its name to Long Blockchain. And why did it change its name to Long Blockchain? Because it told everybody, instead of making iced tea, we're now going to concentrate on developing blockchain technology. And lo and behold, the price of this stock quadrupled in one day. Now, since then, it has decreased significantly because people got a sense that this company is actually no longer making iced tea, and it hasn't, actually made a blockchain technology that works, right? And so, but you still have this crazy fluctuation. Okay, here, this is Kodak. The same thing. This has happened about a month after Long Island Iced Tea Blockchain Company. Kodak announced that they were going to develop its own Bitcoin called a Kodak coin. And when it did, boom, sure enough, the value of the Kodak stock, quadrupled in one day. Now it has since settled, but it's settled a little bit higher than it was prior to the announcement. Because people aren't even sure if Kodak has developed a coin, if they haven't developed a coin, if it has any value whatsoever. Okay, so companies that take on either a coin or blockchain technology and announce that they're taking on a coin or a blockchain technology have seen huge benefits right away, but then those benefits seem to settle, within a month or two of them making these announcements. All right. Are there any questions? Any additional questions here?
Yeah, I think a relevant question from Steve. He's wondering what's the value of a platform creating their own, cryptocurrency rather than simply adding to the platforms that already accept Bitcoin, Ethereum, or Ripple, or the others. What's the benefit of creating their own?
Yeah, well, I mean, in some senses, there's a value, like an internal value proposition. So for Kodak, you can see that when Kodak says, "Let's announce our own crypto coin, a Kodak coin," well, the value of their stock, quadruples in a second. And so if you are a shareholder of Kodak, now all of a sudden, your shares are worth 4 times as much as they were a minute ago. And so you could say the value is by doing something new, the market has shown so far that people place a really high value, initially a really high value on the creation or the talk of a creation of a new coin. Okay, and so it's kind of the Wild West. It's not just kind of the Wild West. It is the Wild West. And so you walk into a town and everybody is using a different medium of exchange. So you walk into a saloon and they say, you say, "Oh, I need a whiskey, partner," because we're in the Wild West, of course. And they say, "Terrific, that'll be 8 shoelaces." And you say, "I don't have shoelaces. I've got bubble gum." And somebody goes, "Oh, I transact in bubble gum, but also in, like sheep's teeth." You're like, "This is crazy. Like, we can't get anything done because everybody has a different medium of exchange here." That's what we're talking about with respect to cryptocurrencies, is that there is no settled medium of exchange. And so if you want to create your own crypto, you can do it. And all you have to do is convince other people that it has value. Clearly, Long Island Blockchain Iced Tea Company and Kodak and a bunch of other companies have said, "Look, if we just announce that we're even thinking about this thing, our stock price is going to quadruple in a second. So let's just announce that we're going to do this, even if we don't have any intention to." Right? Of course, I don't know if Kodak really believes that or Long Island Blockchain Company really believes that, but I can get a sense that they might believe that by looking at these graphs. I hope I answered your question there, sir.
Another question may be relevant at this time is come from Hauk. And so, given, as you just mentioned, that it's a Wild West out there, Hauk is wondering, that given that they are unregulated and not government backed, do you believe this might change in the future? Specifically, would the SEC or World Bank maybe have interest in regulating these currencies?
Yeah, you're absolutely right on the pulse here, right? So the SEC has come out very recently and said that they are looking into regulating this, and part of it is this: when you buy, let's suppose that a company like Kodak was privately held and they go public, right? So in the process of going public, they have to they have an initial public offering, okay? But as part of that initial public offering, this company has to reveal things about its finances to the SEC. And then people can get their hands on their finances, a prospectus, and what have you, in order to identify whether or not this is a company that you want to buy. So when I buy a share of Kodak, I'm saying I am willing to own Kodak. But I'm only willing to do that because I can look into Kodak's financials and say, this is what I'm buying. This is what they make. This is how much they earn. This is how much it costs them. This is how much profit or loss that they have. And I get information from their CEO or their president or their COO or what have you about the direction of the company. And so the SEC says you have to present all this information to the potential shareholders to allow them to accurately assess whether or not they want to own your company. There is no transparency with respect to different coin offerings. So a PotCoin if you will, has what's called an ICO, an initial coin offering. And so as part of the ICO, they basically just go into the universe and say, now this coin is open for business and it can transact in markets, right? And so like, the Chicago Board Options Exchange, Chicago Mercantile Exchange, they have Bitcoin futures, right? You can buy and sell Bitcoin or other different cryptos on regulated platforms, but the cryptos themselves are unregulated, right? So if PotCoin has an ICO, and they must have because it's out there, you don't know what it is you're buying. And so the SEC is looking into this and saying, we're not so comfortable with this Wild West going on. Maybe this is something that we need to regulate. And we have seen in different markets where different countries are cracking down on the use of cryptos, right? And so in some Asian countries, they've kind of collapsed or eliminated the availability of using cryptos in particular ways, saying we're not gonna support these cryptocurrency markets or these cryptocurrency exchanges because we don't really know what it is that people are buying and selling. You're just buying and selling a feeling, a vibe about future value, right? I mean, kind of like when you buy or sell a share of Kodak, right? You say, when I buy Kodak, I'm buying some idea about what Kodak represents or what they produce. But when you buy, let's say, a coin, a PotCoin, what are you buying? You don't know. It's hard to know. And so it's not very regulated, right? And that's maybe one of the benefits of these things is that there's a need for people to transact in markets that are not easily transactable, and this gives them an opportunity to transact. But of course, this is also very scary because you say, okay, we have no idea who's transacting, and they could be transacting things very nefarious. So buying and selling, illicit drugs or narcotics or weapons, or you pick a thing that could be illegal, and people are buying and selling them using these cryptocurrencies, and it makes it very, very difficult to track who's just purchased what. So I think the Wild West is a good analogy there. Other questions or thoughts?
Alana, Marion, and Steve all are harping on the same topic about security hacking and theft of Bitcoin. Can you provide a bit of commentary on how that can take place if it's supposed to be secure, if it's supposed to be transparent? How does this take place and how can it be prevented?
So here's what's going on: is that it's secure in that I can't forge a Bitcoin because I need to have information from previous transactions, okay? But here's where it becomes very susceptible to some types of hacks, okay? Let's suppose that just like I have a wallet like in my pocket, okay? If I leave my wallet on the counter at Starbucks and walk away, somebody could pick up my wallet and go. Now, as long as it's in my pocket and my pocket's close to me and I'm not on a tram in Amsterdam or something, where my dad got his wallet stolen from his front pocket, it's pretty safe, okay? So here's how a Bitcoin hack works. If I were to leave my wallet on the proverbial shelf at the local Starbucks, right, on the counter at the local Starbucks, then people can walk in and take it. And so if I make my information known, I have a public access key, right? And so I have a password and a public key to my coin wallet. And so when I log into my coin wallet, I use some type of a personal name or an ID name and a password, and now I have access to my wallet. Well, that's as susceptible to hacking as my Facebook account or my Twitter account or anything else like this. And so the wallet itself is not any more secure than any other place where you store digital information. And so if you set up your wallet and you announce to everybody where you have set up your wallet, and you say, oh, by the way, my password is something like 123 password. Well, people can now go in and access your wallet, and then they can send your coin to anybody. And what happens is, as soon as that's done, you can't go back in and say, like, no, that transaction wasn't accurate. That wasn't my transaction. That was somebody else's transaction. Because as soon as it happens, it's been verified. You can't get those coins back. They're gone, right? And so the hack is happening at the same place that all other digital hacks occur, and that is sort of some point of entry that allows you to manipulate your accounts.
Thank you. Coming in from Roger, I think he's wondering about whether or not there's any sort of possibility of any sort of private exchange with Bitcoin. For example, how does one, for example, keep a company acquisition private from from public view using a currency like Bitcoin?
Well, okay, so there's two kind of questions there. I want to make sure that I'm answering them, and if I don't, I'll circle back around with our moderator. Okay, so here's the deal: you, as an individual company, you could establish a blockchain that is not publicly accessible, right? So if you're, let's say, Toyota or a Ford or something like this, and I have an example of Ford here, and you want to track a component, so you know where it is your component came from, when it entered your factory, what car it was used on, when it left your factory. You could develop an internal blockchain environment that only your quality control managers are able to access, and they access them all at the same time, and they can look at that information. Okay, so you can set up a blockchain that is 100% public, that is 100% private, that has some kind of public and private interface, and what have you. And so blockchains can be set up that have any flavor, right? If you want to, let's say you want to take over a company and you want to do it using Bitcoin, which I think is what your question is, you would still have to translate the Bitcoin to something else. And so right now, there's not an exchange to say use Bitcoin to buy shares of Apple, right? That transaction can't be done because you can't buy Apple stock with Bitcoin. You can buy Apple stock with dollars. So what happens is that you have to, if you have Bitcoin and you want to buy Apple stock, you have to translate your Bitcoin to dollars and then use those dollars to buy the Apple stock. And as soon as you do, now everybody knows that you own that Apple stock. I mean, it becomes public knowledge that you are one of the shareholders of Apple. So you can't like anonymously purchase a company with Bitcoin because that market doesn't exist. There's no stock to Bitcoin transaction market, right? All the transaction markets are Bitcoin to dollars or Bitcoin for Bitcoin, but in the stock market, you have to purchase stocks with physical dollars. Did I answer the question?
I'll wait for if Roger can confirm. I'll try and get in just a couple more questions as we're getting to the end of time, and then we'll wrap things up. I have a question coming in from Susan. You'd spoken a lot previously about the fact that Bitcoin transactions must be verified. You answered a previous question about who the verifiers are, who the network is. She's wondering, how do you essentially check that the network is good? The people who are doing the verification, how are they sort of policed to know that they're the right people to be doing the verification?
Yeah, so the policing is done by the network itself, right? And so it would be very difficult to, let's say, I'm going to set up a counterfactual example and show you why it is that counterfactual example couldn't work. So let's suppose that I work out a system with all of my, like a bunch of nefarious friends of mine, right? And we say, like, here's the deal. We're going to pretend that you have 1,000 Bitcoins and you're going to go buy like a Learjet. And this person has accepted 1,000 Bitcoins in exchange for this jet, right? And so what we're going to do, all my nefarious friends, we're going to tell the owner of the Learjet that in fact you do have these 1,000 Bitcoins, so that he can proceed with the transaction, drop off the jet, and we're going to make 1,000 Bitcoins appear in his wallet. So I couldn't find enough friends who would go along with my scheme that would cancel out the rest of the network. Because what has happened is we've created an incentive for groups of people to join together and try to verify what's going on. And so, because what happens is, as they verify, they're trying to verify that I have 1,000 Bitcoin and that this guy is going to give me a Learjet for 1,000 Bitcoin. They get an incentive. They get Bitcoin when they verify that that has occurred. And what happens is then a whole bunch of computer servers are directed towards the network, and they're trying to essentially solve these math problems and say, is this chain complete because it's composed of the previous block and the previous block upon that and the previous block upon that and the previous block upon that. And so they're all acting autonomously to try to solve this problem in order to receive, one fraction of a Bitcoin, because their computer server is adding to this network trying to solve the math problem. There's so much incentive for a bunch of people to go solve this problem that my group of friends, even if it was 1,000 of us, would be minuscule in terms of the number of people who are in the network trying to verify the transaction, the next transaction. And so the network polices itself by the law of large numbers. There's so many people, individual autonomous people in there, that if a small group of people tried to cheat the system would say, nope, I don't know how you can't make that transaction because we can't find any trace of you owning 1,000 Bitcoin. And then it would be like, everybody would say, yep, we've just verified that is in fact true. And so I could have a couple of my friends screaming, no, we really do. But then we'd have 1 million people saying, nope, there's no evidence of this next. And so the fact that there's a large number of people in a network sort of eliminates the possibility for a small number of people to put up like a false transaction.
Okay, great. I'll end with 2 final forward-looking questions. The first comes from Laura. Laura would like to understand whether or not you foresee a single international cryptocurrency in the future.
No, I really don't. And I mean, I know I've in this talk I've mentioned Bitcoin a number of times, and Bitcoin Cash and Ethereum and Ripple and PotCoin, and none of these companies are paying me for any of those things. Just those are the companies that come to mind, but it could have been any number of Pineapple Coin. I mean, right? The fact that they're unregulated, the fact that anybody can create them, means that it really makes it difficult to corral everybody into a single idea. I think that there's a lot less longevity in the cryptocurrency itself and a whole bunch of longevity into the blockchain idea, right? So I mentioned Ford a little while ago. I mean, Ford is using a blockchain ledger to identify how its vehicles are moving around, where the components came from, and they've created the Mobility Open Blockchain Initiative with IBM, Accenture, and so what's happened is they're interacting with different companies to try to create a blockchain system that allows them to track, for quality control purposes or logistic purposes, how its components have gone into a car and where the car is. I think that there's a lot of staying power in the blockchain technology. I think there's less staying power in the crypto coins which use the blockchain technology.
All right, great. And then the final question, again from Vladimir. He'd like to understand your perspective on current and also future uses, applications of Bitcoin or cryptocurrency in real business.
So the use of cryptocurrencies is, so people are using cryptos in business where it might be very difficult to transact. Okay, and so let's suppose that I am a small startup in Haiti. Okay, so one is I have to get capital. I have to believe that the people that I'm interacting with, that I have faith in all of them. Okay, and so what happens is that I might be able to be very open with my transactions by doing all my transactions in a cryptocurrency, right? Where I say like, okay, I know I'm in a system that is where the value of my currency fluctuates wildly. I cannot transact very well in my current currency situation, so I'm going to transact with Bitcoins. And as long as all of the participants are willing to transact in Bitcoins, then we can make these transactions happen. And this is a real example. Right? I really worked with some different organizations in Haiti, and this is, cryptocurrencies are something that they are seriously interested in terms of buying and selling goods and services, because they feel that it may be a more secure and an open line of communication to get things done. Like, look, we can get it done. The thing ends up in your coin wallet in a second, and we can make this transaction as long as you're comfortable with the value of coin that I'm sending you and you're willing to transact, then let's get the transaction done. So it cuts down on all of the things that might get in the way of two groups of individuals or single individuals working together. And you can see that through political issues and currency issues and just distance issues, that sometimes you could have difficulties with two groups of people, a business in one place and a business in a different country, that might have a really difficult time trusting each other. But doing it in this way, you say like, look, I'm going to hit go and you're going to get some Bitcoin in your wallet right now, right? And then you can translate that into dollars. And so that transaction can be done a lot simpler with a cryptocurrency. I hope that answers your question.
I believe so. So thank you very much, Tom, for a really engaging and very thorough presentation walkthrough of Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, how they work. We thank all of you for attending this collaboration between Goizueta Business School at Emory University and Ivy Exec, and we hope that you join us next time as we continue to collaborate. And I'll let you sign off, Tom, any final words to the audience.
No, thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to talk about this really cool subject.
All right, great. Take care and see you soon, everyone. Goodbye.